The morning sky on Kepler 442 be burned, red like blood, as Dr. Kim. Hyun ran through the smoking ruins of what used to be his home. The ground shook under his feet as another explosion lit up the horizon. Behind him, he could hear the terrible sounds of the alien raiders destroying everything they had built. 3 days ago, life had been peaceful in the human colony. Children played in the gardens while their parents worked in the deep mines, pulling valuable crystals from the planet's core. The settlement had been their home for 15 years, a quiet place where families could live and work together under alien stars. Then the ships came. They appeared like dark shadows against the morning sun, massive vessels that blocked out the light. At first, the colonists thought they might be traders or explorers. The colony had no weapons, no soldiers, no way to fight. They were miners and scientists, teachers and farmers. Peace was all they knew. The aliens called themselves the Vorthok, Dominion. They did not come to trade or explore. They came to take everything. Haon pressed his back against a broken wall and tried to catch his breath. In his hands, he held the colony's last working communicator, a small device that could send messages across the stars. The main communication tower was gone, destroyed in the first attack, but this little transmitter might still work. Through the smoke, he could see the Vorthok moving between the ruined buildings. They were tall creatures with hard shells covering their bodies, like giant insects walking on 2 legs. Their faces were hidden behind dark masks, but their eyes glowed with a cold, hungry light. They dragged screaming people toward their ships, separating the young from the old, the strong from the weak. Hyun had seen what happened to those who were taken. Some were forced to work in terrible conditions, digging in dangerous mines until they collapsed. Others disappeared into the alien ships and never came back. The lucky ones died quickly. His wife Minnie and their daughter Sora were somewhere in the underground shelters. At least he hoped they were. The emergency plan had sent all families to the hidden bunkers beneath the settlement. But how long could they stay there? How long before the Vorthok found them too? Another blast shook the ground. Hyun knew he was running out of time. Aliens were getting closer, searching every building, every hiding place. Soon they would find him. He turned on the communicator and spoke into it with a shaking voice. "This is Dr. Kim Hain, colony administrator of the human settlement on Kepler 442b. We are under attack by hostile aliens calling themselves the Vorthok Dominion. They appeared 3 days ago without warning." He paused as a group of Vorthok warriors passed nearby, their heavy footsteps making the rubble bounce. When they were gone, he continued, "We have no military forces, no weapons to defend ourselves. 700 people lived here, mostly families with children. The attackers are taking prisoners and killing those who resist. I have seen terrible things I cannot describe." His voice broke as he remembered the scenes he had witnessed. Neighbors torn from their families, friends shot down as they tried to run, children crying for parents who would never come home. The main settlement is destroyed. Our communication tower is gone. I am using a portable transmitter and I do not know if this message will reach anyone. If any human ships are listening, please, ... we need help. A plasma bolt suddenly burned through the air next to his head, leaving a glowing hole in the wall. Behind him, Hyun spun around and saw 3 Vorthok soldiers moving toward him, their weapons raised. "There are survivors in the underground bunkers beneath Grid 7, he said quickly into the communicator. "The shelter entrances are hidden, but the coordinates are ... He rattled off a series of numbers while backing away from the approaching aliens. One of the Vorthok said something in their harsh language. Another pointed its weapon directly at Hyan's chest. "Please," Hyan whispered into the device, tears running down his dirty face. "If anyone receives this message, remember that we were here. Remember that we were human beings with families, with hopes, with dreams. Do not let them forget us. The lead Vorthok soldier stepped closer, its glowing eyes fixed on the communicator. In Hyen's hands, "Tell them," Hyen said, his voice growing stronger. "Tell them that we did not surrender. Tell them that we died as free people, not as slaves." He threw the communicator as hard as he could, sending it flying over the alien's head and into a pile of debris. The device kept transmitting even as the Vorthok fired their weapons, as darkness closed in. Hyen's last thought was of his family, safe in their underground shelter. Maybe somehow his message would reach other humans among the stars. Maybe someone would come for the survivors. Maybe someone would make the Vorthok pay for what they had done. The communicator continued broadcasting into the void, carrying its desperate plea across the endless darkness of space, hoping to find ears that would listen and hearts that would answer. 6 months later, on the dark side of Earth's moon, Communications Officer Park Jin was having the most boring night shift of his career. The deep space monitoring station was quiet except for the steady hum of computers searching the void for signals. Most nights brought nothing but empty static and the occasional message from trade ships. Jin yawned and reached for his coffee when suddenly every alarm in the station began screaming at once. "What the hell?" he muttered, his fingers flying over the control panel. The main screen showed a weak signal coming from deep space, so faint it was almost lost in the background noise. But the computer had detected something special about it, quantum encryption that only humans used. "Lieutenant Commander Lee," Jin shouted across the room. "You need to see this." So Jin rushed over, her dark hair still messy from where she had been sleeping in the break room. "What is it, Jin?" "Distress signal, ma'am. Human origin. The computer is trying to decode it now." They watched as the ancient message slowly took shape on their screens. The voice that came through the speakers was broken and desperate, filled with static but unmistakably human. "This is Dr. Kim Hyen, colony administrator of the human settlement on Kepler-44b. Sujin felt her blood turn cold as she listened. To the transmission? When it finished, the room was silent except for the hum of the machines. "Run it again," she ordered quietly. They listened 3 more times. Each time, the message hit them harder. A human colony under attack. Families killed or captured. Children crying for help that might never come. "Check the colonial records," Sujin said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Find out everything about this settlement." Jin's fingers danced over the holographic controls. Colony NK442. Launched 17 years ago with 700 settlers. Last communication received 3 years after arrival. Then ... nothing. Listed as lost contact in the official records. "Lost contact," Sujin repeated bitterly. "Not destroyed, not dead, just forgotten." She grabbed the secure communication device and opened a direct channel to Earth Command. "This is Luna Station 7. I need to speak with Admiral Choi immediately. Priority Alpha." 2 hours later, Jin watched as military shuttles landed at their station. Admiral Choi Min stepped out of the first shuttle, followed by several high-ranking officers. The Admiral was a small woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that seemed to see right through you. "Play the message," Choi ordered, without wasting time on greetings. They gathered in the station's main briefing room and listened to Dr. Kim Hyun's desperate plea. When it ended, General Kong Daeho pulled up a star map showing the location of Kepler-44b. "It's been 6 months since this transmission, Kong," said grimly. "At that distance, even traveling at maximum speed, it would take us at least 8 months to reach them. So we're talking about 1.5 years since the attack," added Colonel Yu Haijin. "Those people are probably dead," finished Admiral Choi. Or worse, the room fell silent. Everyone knew about the reports coming from the outer colonies. Stories of alien raiders who took prisoners not for ransom or negotiation, but for purposes too horrible to discuss in polite company. Ma'am Jin spoke up hesitantly. "What about the Vorthok Dominion? The message mentioned them specifically." Intelligence officer Captain Nam pulled up a file on the main screen. "We've been tracking them for 2 years. They're expanding through That sector of space like a disease. They don't negotiate. Don't take long-term prisoners. Don't leave survivors who might warn others. Photos appeared on the screen showing destroyed colonies and empty settlements. Each image told the same story: complete annihilation. They see other species as either resources to be harvested or obstacles to be removed, Nam continued. Wiped out at least 6 different alien civilizations in the past 5 years. Admiral Choi stood up slowly, her face hard as stone. Recommendations? Honestly, ma'am, General Kang replied, by the time we get there, it will be too late to save anyone. The smart move would be to increase patrols in our own territory and prepare our defenses. The smart move, Choi repeated quietly. Then her voice grew stronger. The smart move would be to abandon 700 human beings who trusted us to protect them. The smart move would be to let aliens think they can attack our people without consequences. Don't. She walked to the star map and placed her finger on Kepler 4 for 2b. Here's what we're going to do instead. We're going to assemble the largest military fleet in human history. We're going to travel across half the galaxy. We're going to show these Vorthok bastards why every other species in the universe calls us Deathworlders. The room erupted in excited voices, but Choi raised her hand for silence. I want 12 heavy battle cruisers, 40 destroyers, and full support vessels. Marine assault teams, medical ships, everything we need for a rescue, operation, and a war. Colonel Yu, you're in charge of ground forces. General Kang, fleet coordination is yours. Ma'am, Colonel, you asked, what if there's no one left to rescue? Admiral Choi's smile was cold and sharp as a blade. Then we make sure the galaxy remembers what happens when you murder human families. The Vorthok Dominion is about to learn why you never, ever attack our people. Within hours, emergency orders went out to every human military base. The message was simple: prepare for war. 8 months into their journey through the dark emptiness of space, the human fleet had become something far more dangerous than a rescue mission. Captain Park Sung stood on the bridge of his battlecruiser Soul's Fury, watching his crew train for the 100th time. Every day brought them closer to their target, and every day made them more ready for war. Sir, incoming message from Admiral Choi, his communications officer, announced. The Admiral's face appeared on the main screen, her expression serious. All ship captains, report to the flagship for briefing in 1 hour. We've received new intelligence about our targets. Park nodded and turned to his second-in-command, Major Kim Sa-young. Take the bridge. I'll be back in a few hours. The shuttle. Ride to Admiral Choi's flagship gave Park time to think about how much had changed during their long journey. When they left Earth, most of the crew had been excited about their first real military mission. Now, after months of training and learning about their enemy, excitement had turned into something colder and more focused. The briefing room on the flagship was packed with captains and senior officers from across the fleet. Admiral Choi waited until everyone was seated before beginning. Ladies and gentlemen, we've learned some disturbing things about our enemy during this journey, she said, activating a holographic display. The Vorthok Dominion isn't just another aggressive alien species. There's something much worse. The display showed images of destroyed worlds and empty space stations. Each picture was more horrible than the last. They don't just conquer planets. Continued Intelligence Officer Captain Nam. They study the species they capture. They learn how to break them physically and mentally, and they use that knowledge to attack other worlds more effectively. A new image appeared. Alien documents. Translated into human language, Park felt sick as he read the cold, scientific descriptions of torture and experimentation. According to these captured files, humans are what they call a Class 5 Deathworld species, Nam explained. They've been planning an assault on Earth itself, but they wanted to study smaller human colonies first. The room erupted in angry voices. Park heard several captains cursing under their breath. Someone shouted about making the aliens pay for what they had done. Admiral Choi raised her hand for silence. This changes nothing about our mission, but it does explain why the galaxy fears us, while other species develop faster ships to run. Away from danger, we built better weapons to destroy it. She switched the display to show human military technology compared to other species. The difference was shocking. Where alien ships carried mostly exploration equipment and defensive systems, human vessels were floating weapons, platforms designed for one purpose: war. Every human warship carries enough firepower to level a city, the Admiral continued. Our Marines train for combat in environments that would kill most aliens just from the atmosphere. We are, quite literally, the monsters that other species have nightmares about. Captain Lee Hajin from the destroyer Pusan Blade raised her hand. Ma'am, are we sure about our battle tactics? The Vorthok fleet outnumbers us 3-1. Numbers don't matter when your enemy can't hurt you, replied General Kong. Their weapons are designed to disable and capture. Ours are designed to completely destroy. They've never fought anyone who shoots back with the intention to kill. Down in the Marine quarters of Seoul's Fury, Lieutenant Bae Minho was running his squad through another boarding drill. The men and women under his command had become deadly efficient over the past 8 months. Remember, he told them, as they practiced clearing simulated Vorthok ship corridors, we're not just fighting for those colonists. Every alien species in the galaxy is going to hear about this battle. They need to understand that attacking humans has consequences. Private Choi Yun-soo raised her hand. Sir, what if there are no survivors to rescue? Minho's face hardened. Then we make sure the galaxy remembers what happened to the last group of aliens who murdered human families. Training had changed all of them. Where once they might have hesitated to use maximum force, now they practice techniques designed to end fights as quickly and violently as possible. Every drill, every simulation, every lesson had one goal: make the enemy afraid to ever attack. Humans again. In the ship's medical bay, Dr. Oh Yujin prepared for the worst. She had studied reports of what the Vorthok did to their prisoners, and she knew that any survivors they found would need extensive medical and psychological care. We might be too late to save lives, she told her medical team, but we can still save souls. As the fleet continued its journey through hyperspace, Admiral Choi recorded a message that would be broadcast to every ship. In 2 weeks, we will arrive at our destination, her voice echoed through the corridors. We will find either survivors to rescue or crimes to avenge. Either way, we will send a message that travels to every corner of the galaxy. Humanity protects its own, and those who harm our people will face consequences beyond their worst nightmares. Throughout the fleet, men and women prepared their weapons, checked their equipment, and made peace with what they were about to do. They were no longer a rescue mission. They had become something the galaxy had never seen before, an unstoppable force of human vengeance. Traveling across the stars to answer a cry for help that might have come too late, the Vorthok Dominion is about to learn why the universe called humans Deathworlders. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a pack of hungry wolves appearing in a field of sheep. 63 ships materialized at the edge of the Kepler system, their black holes reflecting the distant star's light. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Choi Min watched as the tactical display filled with red dots, Vorthok vessels scattered throughout the system. Sir, we're detecting 47 enemy ships, reported the sensor operator. They're moving to intercept us. Admiral? Choi nodded calmly. Open a channel to all human ships. Battle Formation Alpha. Prepare for combat. Throughout the fleet, klaxons wailed as crews rushed to their battle stations. On the battlecruiser Seoul's Fury, Captain Park Sung felt his heart beating faster as he watched the enemy ships approaching on his screens. They're trying to surround us, observed Major Kim So-young from her position at the tactical station. Let them try, Park replied. They have no idea what they're about to face. The first communication from the Vorthok came through the main speakers, translated by the ship's computer into human language. The voice was cold and arrogant. Unknown vessels, you are trespassing in Dominion space. You will surrender immediately or be destroyed like all the other inferior species we have encountered. Admiral Choi stood up slowly, his face showing no emotion. He activated the fleet communication system and spoke in a voice that carried across space to every ship in both fleets. This is Admiral Choi Min of the Seoul Defense Coalition. 2 years ago, you attacked a human colony in this system. You murdered innocent families and took prisoners. You've exactly 30 seconds to begin releasing our people and evacuating this system. The Vorthok response was immediate and predictable. Your species is weak and pathetic. We will harvest you just as we harvested the others. Admiral Choi's smile was cold as winter ice. Wrong answer. All ships, you are weapons free. Show them why the galaxy calls us Deathworlders. The battle began with a coordinated Vorthok plasma attack from 20 ships. Brilliant bolts of energy streaked across space toward the human fleet, each one capable of melting through several meters of steel. The plasma bolts struck the human ships and simply disappeared. The advanced shields absorbed the energy attacks, like sponges soaking up water. Their turn, Admiral Choi said quietly. The human response was devastation beyond anything the Vorthok had ever imagined. Captain Park watched from his bridge as Sol's Fury fired its main kinetic cannons. Tungsten slugs the size of telephone poles accelerated to 20% of light speed, crossing the distance to the nearest Vorthok cruiser in seconds. The alien ship didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist. The kinetic projectiles hit with the force of nuclear weapons, turning the enemy vessel into an expanding cloud of superheated gas and metal fragments. "Target destroyed," reported the weapons officer, his voice filled with amazement. Across the battlefield, the same scene played out again and again. Human ships fired their terrible weapons, and Vorthok vessels vanished in brilliant flashes of light. The aliens' energy shields, designed to stop plasma and laser attacks, were useless against solid projectiles moving at impossible speeds. Commander Lee Hejin, commanding the destroyer Pusan Blade, led a formation of 8 ships in a flanking attack. The smaller human vessels moved with deadly precision, their crews working together like parts of a single machine. "Lock on to the command ship," she ordered. "Fire everything we have." Nuclear missiles launched from her destroyer, each one guided by artificial intelligence that could outthink any alien computer. The Vorthok command ship tried to shoot down the incoming weapons, but human missiles were designed to penetrate any defense. The nuclear explosions lit up space like new stars being born. Where the Vorthok flagship had been, only twisted metal and radiation remained. On his bridge, the Vorthok fleet commander stared in horror as his forces were systematically destroyed. In 30 years of conquest, he had never seen anything like this. The humans fought with a savagery and efficiency that defied belief. "Retreat," he screamed at his remaining ships. All vessels retreat immediately, but it was too late. The human fleet had spread out to cover all escape routes. Every time a Vorthok ship tried to run, human destroyers were waiting with weapons ready. Lieutenant Bei Minho, aboard the Marine assault ship Hammer of Justice, watched the space battle from the troop transport bay. Around him, 200 Marines checked their weapons and equipment, ready to board any enemy ships that survived. "Looks like there won't be much left aboard," commented Sergeant Park Jiate as another Vorthok ship disappeared in a ball of fire. "Good," Minho replied grimly. "After what they did to our people, they deserve everything they're getting." The battle lasted for hours. When it was over, 43 Vorthok ships had been completely destroyed. Fod Mida, Ren Pravina, Prime by way of Ben by when by. I mean, Ben Benelam Ren, Ben Bimben by Ben when by when Ben away and Ben when Red Ben open by. Escape into hyperspace, carrying with them the terrifying news of what they had witnessed. Admiral Choi stood on his bridge, looking out at the debris field that had once been an enemy fleet. The space around Kepler 442b was filled with wreckage and the expanding gases of destroyed ships. "Sir," his communications officer reported. "We're receiving surrender signals from several damaged Vorthok vessels." "No prisoners," the admiral replied coldly. "Finish them." The last Vorthok ships died in silence. their crews never understanding how their supposedly superior civilization had been crushed so easily by the monsters from the death world called Earth. The underground bunkers beneath Grid 7 had become tombs of despair. For 2 years and 3 months, 847 human survivors had lived in the darkness, eating emergency rations that tasted like cardboard and drinking recycled water that never quite lost its metallic taste. The air recyclers wheezed constantly, struggling to keep up with so many people in such a small space. Dr. Kim Haeon sat in the corner of the main shelter, his once healthy body now thin and weak. His hair had turned completely gray during their imprisonment, and his hands shook constantly from malnutrition. Around him, children who had been barely old enough to walk were now learning to read by the dim emergency lights.
Daddy, when can we go outside?
Little Park Sora tugging at her father's torn shirt. Her voice was barely a whisper. They had all learned to speak quietly after the Vorthok stalled listening devices near the shelter entrances. Soon, sweetheart, her father, Lee Dong-woo, replied, though his eyes held no hope. Soon, above them, the Vorthok had turned their beautiful colony into a prison camp. Those humans strong enough to work were forced to dig in the dangerous deep mines, extracting rare crystals for the alien war machine. The weak and elderly were taken away for medical experiments. Children were separated from their parents and trained to serve their new masters. Every few weeks, the aliens would select more prisoners from the underground shelters. Families were torn apart. Friends disappeared forever. Hope died a little more each day. Then, on a morning that started like any other, the ground began to shake. At first, the survivors thought it was another earthquake. The planet had been unstable since the Vorthok began their deep mining operations. But this shaking was different, rhythmic, like giant footsteps approaching from far away. "What is that sound?" whispered Kim Min-ae, pressing her ear to the shelter wall. The sound grew louder. Explosions echoed from above, followed by the high-pitched whine of energy weapons and the deeper boom of something much more powerful. The children huddled closer to their parents as dust rained down from the ceiling. "They're fighting someone," Dr. Hand said, his voice filled with disbelief. "The Vorthok are under attack." For hours, the battle raged above their heads. Survivors could hear alien voices screaming orders, heavy vehicles racing back and forth, and the terrible sound of buildings being destroyed. Some of the younger people wanted to go outside and see what was happening, but the older colonists held them back. "It might be worse aliens," warned old Mr. Choi. "We should stay hidden until we know for sure." Then, suddenly, everything went quiet. The silence was more frightening than the noise had been. For 2 days they heard nothing from above. No alien voices, no vehicles, no sounds of activity at all. It was as if the entire world had died. On the 3rd day, they heard new sounds. Heavy footsteps, but different from the clicking feet of the Vorthok. These footsteps sounded ... familiar. "Hello?" A voice called from above, speaking in Korean. "Is anyone down there? This is Sergeant Nam Jiate of the Seoul Defense Coalition, Marine Corps. If there are human survivors in these shelters, please respond." The survivors stared at each other in shock. Human voices, speaking their language, seemed impossible. Dr. Han was the first to move. With shaking hands, he activated the shelter's external communication system. This is Dr. Kim Haeon. "We are human colonists. Are you really? "Yes, sir," came the reply, and the Marine's voice was thick with emotion. "We're really here. We came as soon as we got your message. All of you, step back from the entrance. We're going to blow the locks." Minutes later, the sealed shelter doors exploded inward. Sunlight, real sunlight, poured into the underground chamber for the first time in over 2 years. The survivors blinked and covered their eyes, unable to believe what they were seeing. Human soldiers in battle armor stood in the doorway, their weapons lowered, their faces showing a mixture of joy and rage. Behind them, the colonists could see blue sky and clean air. Sergeant Nam stepped forward and helped Dr. Han to his feet. The old scientist was crying, his tears cutting clean tracks through the dirt on his face. "You came," Han whispered. "After all this time, you actually came. We never leave our people behind, sir, Nam replied, his own voice breaking. Never. As the survivors emerged from their underground prison, they saw what the human fleet had done to their captors. Where once the Vorthok had built their military base, only smoking craters remained. Alien ships lay scattered across the landscape like broken toys. The sky was clear of enemy vessels. Medical officer Captain O. Eugene worked frantically to treat the survivors. Malnutrition, infections, broken bones that had healed wrong. The evidence of Vorthok cruelty was written on every human body. The bastards were studying us, she reported to Admiral Choi through her communicator. Medical experiments, psychological torture, everything designed to break human will and resistance. Admiral Choi's voice was ice cold when he replied,
Document everything, Doctor.
The galaxy needs to know what happens when aliens attack our people. As the rescue ships prepared to take the survivors home, Admiral Choi recorded a message that would be broadcast on every known alien communication frequency. To all civilizations receiving this transmission, he began, "The Soul Defense Coalition has successfully liberated human prisoners from the Vorthok Dominion. Any species found engaging in slavery, genocide, or attacks on civilian populations will face the full military might of humanity. We do not seek conquests, but we will not tolerate the victimization of the innocent. This is your only warning." Message spread across the galaxy faster than light, carried by alien traders and diplomats who had witnessed the destruction of the Vorthok fleet. The legend grew with each telling, the unstoppable Deathworlder fleet that had crossed impossible distances to answer a single distress call. Humanity had announced itself to the universe. Not as explorers or merchants, but as protectors of the innocent and destroyers of those who preyed upon the weak.